Well, hello. Today I'm going to be working on a mixed media face. This is a drawing book by Jane Davenport, and I'm going to be using this as my inspiration today. She uses a variety of different mediums, including paints, markers, and colored pencils. And this is a book that I purchased at least 5 years ago, but up until recently, I've been somewhat afraid of drawing faces, so I haven't really done much with it. And I'm just going to flip through this quickly so you can get a vague sense of what I'm going to be going for. There is no step-by-step tutorial or specific process I'll be following. This book will simply serve as inspiration for today's project. And I'll be using this guide right here for placement of my facial features. And as you can see, Jane Davenport's style is whimsical, colorful, and bold. And I think she does an especially great job with her eyes. They tend to be on the larger side, and I would say they're often the focal point of her artwork. I'm using a 9 by 12 inch piece of paper, 140-pound cold-pressed watercolor paper. I don't really have much of a plan going into this, but I do know that I'll likely be using watercolor paints at some point. Plus, I don't really think you can go wrong working on a thicker surface when it comes to mixed media. So starting with pencil, I'm just going to be getting the basics in place, thinking back to that guide from the book. And as I work and get some lines down, I'll be getting darker as I go, once I kind of figure out which lines I'm happy with. If you watched my video last month on whimsical faces, you'll remember that I was taking inspiration from Krista Irene art, and her style was also whimsical and bold, but I would say that Jane's style seems to be more precise. It's not realistic, but I would say maybe more planned out. And I really did enjoy the fast and loose approach that Krista takes, so I hope to hold on to some of that with today's project. I don't want to really stop and think too much about it. I just want to kind of go with the flow. And when I'm working on something like this, I'm looking to learn specific techniques, or I'm hoping to be inspired by the look or the feel of the artwork. But that doesn't mean that I'm trying to replicate the work of another artist. So what I like to do is this. I'll flip through a book or watch videos ahead of time, but then I find it helpful to put the materials away when I begin to work on my own art. That way, I'm not tempted to just draw what I see in front of me. I'm still in the process of finding my own style, so going with the flow and letting what's on the paper in front of me dictate what comes next seems to be the best approach for me, at least at this point in my journey. And I'd like to think that eventually I'll be able to place an actual photograph in my line of vision and recreate the image entirely in my own style, but with a clear likeness to the photo. I guess that's a goal of mine. But for now, I'm just discovering what I like and what feels right. Now I'm going to start darkening some of those lines. And not only will this create a more definitive outline for me, but this extra graphite will also come in handy when I start shading in a few minutes here. And I'd like her eyes to be large and her brows dark and her features well defined. I will definitely be doing a few more of these videos in the future where I'm drawing faces. So if you have any artists in mind who are really good at portrait art, not in a super realistic style, but just something really fun and creative, please let me know in the comments. I would definitely love to take a look at them and see what I can learn from their work. I feel like I should have done something a little more exciting with her shirt, but I really don't know what. I don't know, maybe like a flowy little dress with some, I don't know, cap sleeves and some lace. I don't really know. Just something more exciting than this shirt. And for the pupils, I'm just making C shapes so that the white of the eye will still remain untouched. All right, time for some fun. I am so in love with this Q-tip blending method. It makes everything so soft. And I'm sure I'll be building up many layers, but this just creates such a cool, smooth base. And I love how the excess graphite clings to the cotton swab, and then you can use it to smudge all over the other areas of your drawing. I had debated whether or not to start with the background and maybe do some sort of stencils or even bring in some papers, like some thin, lightweight papers, and then glue them to the background. But I wasn't really sure how this whole pencil smudging thing would work if I did that first. And this is a step that I really wanted to make sure that I used, especially when it comes to like faces and people. I absolutely love this whole smudging thing. Working on the shadows of the face is so satisfying. I might get a little bit too carried away with the blending, but that's fine. I like the look of it. And I'm just moving over the pencil marks quickly. I'm not stressing over the details, just blending and softening everything. I will try to be a little careful with the eyes because I do want to leave the whites white. Okay, for the next step, I am thinking watercolor. So what I'm going to do is bring in some watercolor paints. I'm not really going for the realistic skin tone. I'm just kind of grabbing what's left on my palette, to be honest. Sometimes I like it when the palette has like these little bits of leftover color, and I can just grab from there and be surprised with what I get. And I will often do a sketch with a rough outline and pencil and then paint over it, but I don't think I've ever added watercolor with this much shading underneath before. It is creating a bit of a muddy look, but I like it, so I'm going to keep going with this. I do prefer the roughness to the clean, crisp look. And while I would say that Jane Davenport's colors tend to lean more towards the crisp, clean, and bright than mine do, but that's okay, I don't mind. I'm not going to fight it. I'm going to let this picture lead me along. And I know that I'll likely wind up with something that looks nothing like Jane's style, but I figure if I gain something from this experience, then it's still a win. For her shirt, I'm bringing in that same blue that I used for her eyes. And I'm going to be sticking with a slightly larger brush throughout this whole step so that I can keep things loose and I won't be tempted to get into the small details. That just isn't what I want at this point in the process. And I know myself, when it comes to watercolor painting, I always grab that small brush and I want to get into too much detail when it really isn't necessary. And I'm wetting down whole sections, like the hair for example, so that I can work wet on wet and I can drop in additional colors. This will of course look a lot lighter once it's dry, but I think it'll give us a really good base. Those lips definitely need some more color. think I took that a little bit too high on the left side, so I'm going to see if I can remove a little bit there. Just lift it off with a damp brush, and that helps. And now that I'm starting on the background, I realize that I should have probably taped down the sides to avoid warping. So I'll see if I can fix that later by smushing it down under some books. I'm going to be using some brighter colors now, some blues, greens, teal, and I just really wanted something that would be a contrast to the colors that we already used. I'm occasionally letting my wet brush touch the hair so that the colors of the background and the hair will blend together. A little rolled up paper towel to dab away some of the color, and it also adds a bit of texture. Oh, sorry about that. I bump the camera holder every now and then. It's clamped onto my table, so my elbow sometimes bonks it. And take a look at this page from the book that shows a good example of using either stamps or stencils, or maybe even they're using papers to add patterns to both the background as well as to her clothing. So I'm going to be using my stamps to create a background pattern. I'm using a brown distress ink pad along with this large rubber stamp, and the stamp is really just some cursive writing, kind of looks like an old letter or something. And while I am mainly focused on the background, I don't mind if I get a little bit of the ink on the girl or on her clothing. With black ink, I'm adding 2 corner stamps, this little floral guy. And while I'm at it, I'm just going to take this stamp pad and work it all around the edges and the corners. Just kind of grunge it up. It'll look a little more old and distressed this way. Okay, so now I think I want to work on bringing out her face a little bit more. Right now she's just fading into the background, and I want her features to pop some more. Okay, so the pencil isn't really as dark as I'd hoped, so let's go and try this black micron fine liner. And I'm really not sure if this is going to be a big mistake. I guess I don't know unless I try. But what I'm going to do is just outline the main features, and then I think I'll come back through with my pencil again afterwards so that there isn't such a dramatic difference between the color of her skin and the dark lines. I'll kind of try to use the pencil to blend it together, if that makes sense. At least I'm hoping that'll work, because right now, yikes, not really loving this look. And just working some scribbles all through her hair there. All right, I'm going to grab my pencil and let's see if this works. So I will be blending these lines a little bit, but I can already tell that it's helping. It's just making it so that those black lines aren't nearly as harsh. And I'll grab that handy dandy Q-tip. There we go. And I really like how her face isn't completely finished. Like, you can see that there's some white parts of the paper that didn't really get touched by the paint. And I really like that look. I don't know, just something about a picture that like isn't 100% complete I think it adds a lot of interest. I feel like I could go back and forth with the pencil and the Q-tip all day long, but don't worry, I won't. We'll get moving on to the next step. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to be doing next, but I'm pretty sure the picture will lead me, and I'll figure that out pretty quick here. And I am going to put some eyelashes on her. Nothing too big and fancy and dramatic, but I do think she needs some eyelashes for sure. Okay, that helps. With the smudging and the addition of the eyelashes, I think I'm getting closer to the effect that I'm going for. Okay, so I know what I want to do next. I just ran and grabbed my soft pastel pencils and also these rub-on transfers. The rub-on transfers weren't entirely planned, but I saw them while I was in my room getting my pencils, so we're just going to see what happens. So I like this really deep reddish wine color for her cheeks and her lips. And then I also have a pink mauve color set out that I'm going to be using for her lower lip where it should be lighter. I feel like this lady has sort of like a haunted look to her. Like she's trying to hold it all together on the outside and pretend that everything is fine, but there's just something she doesn't want to say out loud. Do you guys do this too? Do you make up like entire backstories about your artwork? I always have like this whole story going on in my head. I don't know, maybe I'm just strange. But anyways, I do kind of like how this is going. I think the addition of the color is really helping. The paints had faded so much that she definitely needed some more. So now I'm just kind of bouncing around with a bunch of different colors to liven up her hair. And of course coming in with that Q-tip afterwards to soften. I really would like to do something more with her shirt, but I just don't know what that would be. I looked around at my stamps when I was in my art room, but I just didn't see anything that I felt would really work for a pattern. So I don't know. I think it's just going to have to stay plain and boring for now. I thought about using soft pastels for the iris of her eyes, but I decided to stick to watercolor. I want a deeper blue, but I think I'd like to keep kind of the glassy and glossy look, if that makes sense. And I'm not sure if I would be able to accomplish that with the pastels. Okay, now what can I do with the transfers? I like that they're on a clear sheet, so you can move them around and get an idea of what it'll look like before you commit. Okay, I'm just gonna go for it. I think these designs are supposed to resemble like maybe some sort of stitching or a rope. I don't know exactly what they're going for, but I do like it. Oops, I took off some of that other one too, so let's just go with it. I'm gonna break this one up and just use little tiny bits of it all over the place. Oh, and I definitely need a vertical line. Between the stamping and the transfers, I have a lot of horizontal lines that I think I want to break up a bit. And that little bit just really didn't want to come off. So I'm going to try that again. Okay, now I want to take a look at that other sheet. I know it had some hearts and whatnot. And let's see how a heart will look. I'm not going to bother overthinking it. I'm just going with it. And I also like these lines that are right next to the heart, so I'm going to include those as well. Okay, so it kind of looks like the heart is moving away from her. So in case her story wasn't sad enough, now her heart is floating away. Okay, so I went and grabbed a black marker as well as a white Posca marker, and I'm going to see if I can get those really dark details and then the highlights in. Ooh, and the second I added those black lines, I immediately regretted it. But I think I'm committed now, so I'm just going to throw in a few more. Ooh, I really don't like that. I'm not really sure if this particular marker is waterproof or not. Oh, nope, it doesn't look like it is. Okay, good. So I'm going to use the water to hopefully soften these lines a bit. Yeah, I feel like that was a really big mistake. But I guess that's going to happen sometimes. You know, I try to be bold, you guys, I really do, but that's just too bold for my liking. I just don't have the boldness in me. I'm more of a muted, subtle girl. But if you've watched my videos before, then you probably already know that about me. But I will say that the water certainly helped some, but I still wish that I would not have done that. All right, I think I want to add some color to that heart. So going back to the watercolor paints, I'm just going to throw in some red. And then using that same red, I'm going to do some splatters just all over the page. Maybe I should have splattered in a black or maybe a dark blue. I never think about this until it's too late, but red splatters kind of resemble blood a little too much. Anyways, I'm going in now with just a damp brush and just touching some of those splatters because I like how it looks when it bleeds a little bit. Okay, I'm going to go press this under a book to flatten it, and then I'll be right back with the final result. Okay, I wound up adding just a couple dots here and there with my, and lines with my white Posca marker, and I think that's about it. Well, I would say despite using the Jane Davenport book as inspiration, it's definitely safe to say it doesn't really look like her style, but that's perfectly fine. I like the fact that she provided a helpful guide for facial features and that she inspired me to try multiple art mediums for this project. I'm branching out tiny bit by tiny bit, and I am gaining confidence and taking chances. So each portrait attempt will bring me closer to finding a style and a method that works for me. And I hope that watching my experimental process will encourage you to take chances in your own art as well. Thank you for watching.